Hello there, Seraphim17 once again. This is my Evil Within DLC, The Consequences, Chapter 3 Part 2. That is quite the mouthful. This is a level by the name of Illusions, and we are in the penultimate section of it. I've just lit my path with a lovely green hue, giving it a nice jade shade as we push forward into a hell of a lot more exposition. However, I'm going to be holding B to skip it because this is a walkthrough. It's not intended to be a storytelling device, unless it's me saying some stupid anecdote to try and lighten whatever the hell's happening or fill the blanknesses of dead space. But a lot of the mechanics from the previous DLC are going to travel into this one. You're going to be using your torch to get rid of fake walls. You're going to be sneaking around a lot of people. You're going to be doing executions with fire axes rather than wielding them like a barbarian. A lot of the changes that are unique to Nicole. Good old Nicole. Oh, Nicole Kidman. I'm easily amused, folks. You'll have to bear with me, but a lot of the things that make up her content is recycled here, and that's another thing that's going to impact on your enjoyment of it. This is a slight puzzle. We're going to be essentially finding out what happened to Ruben, but you already knew this, so it's kind of just confirming what we knew. And here is another one of those puzzles that we've seen before. The solution is over on the wall. You have to just do a little bit of, top trumps to match the squares. This is random, by the way, folks. This is different every time you play, I think. So that was mine, but yours could be different. So if you're coming to this video for that code specifically and it doesn't work, it's because it seems to be different. On Survivalist, it was almost like a reversed C for me. And on this one, I tried the exact same thing and it got nothing. And I'm like, hang on a second. Then I looked at the board and it was different. So I find that to be a very interesting mechanic, and it's probably something that speedrunners hate. The only real big case of it that I saw was a game called Onimusha 3, which it had this fascinating puzzle where there was, I think, 6 warehouses, and when you went inside them, they had a randomly generated painting on the wall, and there could only be 6 paintings, but there was no guarantee which one would be where because they constantly changed depending on new game. And that's the type of stuff that is really interesting, but also a fucking nightmare for somebody trying to get through it swiftly. And I have no idea the motivations behind such a mechanic, but it's probably the logical evolution of the director from the Left 4 Dead and probably from Evolve, but I didn't play that game, where essentially you have an AI that is actively changing the battlefield and actively changing the situation depending on what you're doing and depending on where you go, which I think is an incredibly interesting idea, and it's something that we just really haven't explored enough yet, except for Valve, who are funding those creative devs. But this particular part of the DLC is once again incredibly story heavy, and I was tempted to remove all of it, but chances are I'll get a few people that are getting lost because of the darkness and they would like to see exactly where to go, and if I were to trim all of this out, then those people would inevitably make it heard and feel that this is a lesser product because of it. So I've kept it in for the purposes of having a coherent path through the level. The only trims you're going to see here, folks, are any kind of loading screens, any long loading screens, and any long ladders / long elevators. Everything else is going to be displayed, and hopefully it helps the most amount of people. That being said, I don't think anybody's going to struggle with this, except for that scene we were just on. That room killed me like 10 times on this difficulty. Not being able to see that creature is annoying. Additionally, you can stand underneath her I-beam if you stand close to her, and there's a proximity where you're just close enough not to get spotted or be felt type deal, and you can get away with it for a very long time. I was messing about with it earlier, but I couldn't get it to be consistent. There were times when I could literally hug her ass and there's nothing she could do because I kept doing the whole Scooby-Doo moment of hiding behind the tree when she turned. I'd just hide in a blind spot behind her head, and it was working really, really well, but every so often she'd just go red, and it was pretty inconsistent. This is frustrating as well. This particular level, this section, I really liked. We're on top of the roofs, and it's pretty much the city motif from, was it chapter 11 onwards in Sebastian's campaign, where you were outside, you were in an urban environment, there was all the buildings and the dudes with guns that ruined it. But the setting itself was really interesting because it was a city being ravaged by illusion, basically. Because it wasn't really happening, was it? Or was it? I don't know. And this was an interesting perspective on that particular part of the game, and I really appreciated it, because I like urban environments. I'm one of those people that doesn't mind a boring looking cityscape, because I think it can be done really interestingly. And I think a lot of games shy away from it because it's perhaps, visually uninteresting because we see it every day, but it's not every day we get to walk on scaffolding and on crazy geometry across buildings and things, so I think it can be done really tastefully and made into a very enjoyable sequence. And this is short and it's sweet, but I did enjoy it, and you can't see any of it because of the darkness. But we're being introduced to a new mechanic here, which I'm very glad exists. It's the ability to push people off. And as much as it makes me sound like quite the wannabe murderer, it's useful, because in this area there are 3 haunteds, and each of them would probably be a pain in the ass without an axe or a gun. And believe it or not, you do get a gun in this one, and you're going to be able to use it for a little bit longer than you did in the last one. It's still not running and gunning, outside of a little bit of a shotgun section later on, which I do enjoy. But I think those sequences come as a bit of a double-sided sword, because it shows just how much fun this game can be when you're blowing people's faces off and when you're really getting on top of the combat. And for the most part, Kidman's adventure has been combat-free outside of a few excursions with axes and things, and I don't know, like, I haven't even tried throwing the bottle at people to see if you can execute them, because I get the feeling she probably doesn't even have that, just to kind of screw the player. But I don't know, I've not tested it, so it's something that I'm sure somebody probably will. But this lines up perfectly if you do it this way. He's just about to turn around and walk the other way, so we can then traverse this scaffolding and then push him off the building. And it's another area done quite easily. This time around, the bosses are easy. The bosses in the first part of the DLC weren't exactly difficult, but they were tricky. And they were tricky because of the darkness, and because of a couple of other parameters. But the thing that they share is the bosses don't kill you. Like, anybody who played Akumu difficulty on The Evil Within will understand me when I say those bosses knew how to kill. There was no second chances a lot of the times. You were just dead. And you were just dead because everything killed on that difficulty. It was a one-shot, effectively, all the time. And it set a universal principle of death. And it's one of those principles that you either adjust, or you get angry and never play again. So when you come to Kurayami, and you don't get one shot, in fact you get 1/8 of your life taken off by a grab, it's this disconnect of experience and scar tissue on the parts of your brain where, happiness used to be before the despair of chapter 6 turned up, or whatever section you had trouble with. So when you come to this and you fight these bosses and you're like, whoa, I've been grabbed, I'm dead. I understand how I can do this, I'll do it again. And then they don't kill you. It sometimes leaves you wishing that they did. And I find that such a strange thing that goes through my mind when I'm recording these, but it's true. Like, when I got grabbed by that little shit on the ground and he bit my ankle and took off 10% of my life, I wanted to let him kill me. And there's another situation coming up here where I would have easily just restarted checkpoint if there was an option, but for some reason the game only lets you restart chapter, which I think is a little bit obtuse in today's day and age. So the scenario is simple. You sneak into this office, you pick up something off the desk, you get the hell out of there. But there's a haunted that turns up as you're sneaking in. On my first playthrough, I just kited this haunted and let it patrol and picked up the item and got out of there. For some reason though, I had this notion that there was something in that room I wanted. So, on this playthrough, that was a mistake. I didn't mean for Kidman to get all that speed boost as she got out of cover, I wanted to go the other way. And I lived with it. I went in here, I looked up, there was nothing here, and I thought, shit, I'm gonna have to restart. She tries to grab me, it fucks up, so I'm still at that point where I'm gonna commit to this, so let's pick this up, or don't pick it up. I think I was mashing A, but I didn't get anything, so here she comes. All of this can be avoided if you just, kite round the desks appropriately, but it just goes to show, when the AI wants to be lenient, you can do some really silly things in these games, and there's no way that should have worked, but it did. and I'm not proud of it, but there you go. So now that you've got both the pieces, you can proceed to do this puzzle. And it's nothing new, it's the same puzzle we were doing in the previous DLC, only it's been recycled and amended a little bit here. And once again we're in an elevator, an expositional dump elevator. It's like the reverse of Mass Effect, where in Mass Effect there was little inserts of snippets between characters. In this, there's kind of a lot more, and it's a lot more story focused, which I don't mind too much. I think it's hiding loading though, I really do, because if you look at that, that was what, 5 or 10 seconds, where a little bit of audio played, probably masking a load screen. And if you're wondering, this has been recorded off the 360 version. The Xbox One and PS3 versions are probably much more pretty, but still I think they've done a fantastic job of making it run on this engine. If you're wondering what I was doing just then, on my first playthrough, for whatever reason, Kidman mantled over that instead of having to kick it. It was an awkward looking animation, but it worked. And I couldn't get it to do it just then, so I had to bust my way through. But we've made it to the next saving point, so we get to have the kiddie on our lap, and then we get to kick the kiddie off our lap. Always fun. But if you're watching this, you're probably quite invested in the channel, or you're probably just struggling on Kurayami difficulty. So hopefully it's the former and not the latter for this particular tangent as I go on it, because I'm going to be talking about what's coming up on the channel. At this moment in time, we're in a bit of a Bloodborne frenzy because I have a very large playthrough that is being uploaded every day. But it's coming closer towards its end, which is part 70 something, 74 I think it is. There is a walkthrough coming for that game as well. However, I refuse to do it until the guide comes out, and it's still not out in my fucking country, and it's been like a month since that game came out, which is incredibly frustrating. And I have to speak now because this part's important. So if you sprint from here onwards, you can get to the pistol before the guy even spawns and gives you any issue. That is something that I did not do my first time, so I'm glad I found out that it works. Then we're going to use the cover glitch, which isn't a glitch, it's more of an exploit of how mechanics work in third-person shooters. If you're unfamiliar with it, essentially all you have to do is put your aimer outside of cover, put your body behind cover, and you will generally be able to shoot around cover. It happens in almost all third-person shooters. It is understanding how they are made and understanding how to exploit how they're made to give you an advantage. I could have done that a little bit earlier, got all 3 of them, saved a couple of bullets, but easy to mop up, and it's just refreshing to have a gun in our hands, so I really like this section in spite of it being kind of annoying. The good news too is because the lighting is terrible, I didn't use this barrel just to my left, so when we come in here, when the second spawn of enemies turns up, you've got a free barrel to kill them with, and it ends up working really well. But when you press this switch, it's going to probably give you a checkpoint, and it's going to set off the second of the spawns. So here's the camera showing you something important, but of course when the lighting's turned off, it shows us nothing but blackness, which is stupid really, but there you go. There's your checkpoint, and here comes a big dump of enemies, so a single bullet will take his head off, and here are his friends. Back up, wait for his buddies to get near the barrel, and then take them out. If you get lucky, they'll all run into it. If you want to get aggressive, you can actually push the barrels into people while they're on fire, and it will set them on fire. Not a strategy you see too often, but it will definitely work. And the music is still playing, telling us there's still threats around, but I'm not too sure how the spawns work here. I want to make sure I get as much ammo as I can. It's not necessary whatsoever, because you get more than enough for the next encounter coming up, because we're about to have a boss fight, and the boss fight is easy. I'm sure it can be done even quicker as well, because I shoot her when her light's on, and you can actually shoot her when the light isn't on, but I think you save ammo if you just do it when the light is on. So here's the last dude. I do that to make sure he dies, and I believe that is the last threat. So the sequence coming up, the trickiest aspect of it is the darkness, but if you've done it before, and you should have, to unlock this difficulty, you know what she does. She starts at the far end of the room and she walks all the way to the other side of it. You're going to put yourself behind a pillar, you're going to shoot her in the face 3 times, and then you're going to stamp on that lamp and be done with it. Lighthouse beast be damned. But before that, there's going to be a little bit of running. One thing I've noticed with Kidman too is the sprint doesn't seem to penalise you as quickly as Sebastian does. Like, if you watch, she's still sprinting all the way up until very close to the end of the bar. And if anybody remembers, you know, main game Evil Within, Sebastian would sprint up to like the bottom 20%. He was fucking useless, but she's really, really good. So there's the first bullet. I put myself behind here, and I'm going to eke my way out, waiting for her to turn the light on. I think I try and shoot her here, but it's a bad shot, to say the least. That is the last shot you're going to see me waste. I should have shot her then, but I didn't. Once again, should have shot her then, but I didn't. So now she starts walking. And there's the light. So there's the second shot. One more shot to go. At this point, I was waiting for her to come back this way, but she could have flanked me on the left. So you'll notice I take a quick glance that way, don't see her. And then I hear her, so I move this way. Move around the corner, and there she is. There's the light. And there's the kill. That is a very simple boss, and then all you have to do is walk up to it, press A and stamp it. I don't know if you have to do this, but I do this because I enjoy it. There you go. See you later. I've still yet to go into the model viewer to see exactly what she is, you know, because they generally tell you about the enemies and they give you a cool little bit of description as to what fear they were generated from. But I think it was a cool enemy, but I just think they recycled its use too much. You know, you were always doing the same thing when it turned up. And I appreciate that's often what enemy types are designed to do, but it would have been nice to encounter it in a situation completely different to all the others. Like, if you think about it, the Keepers, you encountered them in some very bizarre situations. And I think that's why they worked so well, because they were quite varied. On this, I believe it is right, left, right. I could be wrong though. The joy is you have a video, just in case. So just watch where I went, I was too busy talking. On this sequence, you're going to be dodging the legs of the boss. I forget the name of that particular creature. But if you played the main game, which I hope you did, you'll understand exactly what it was, and it's a nice little touch that they threw in there, which I thought was cool. But that is the end of Chapter 3. Thank you very much for watching, and you take care now.